All right, hello everyone. You are, if you are joining us, we are. Let me give some background information. We're SojuTalk Kpop Podcast. We talk about K-pop songs and news every week. This is a more or less a summary breakdown of the entire Hybe versus Min Hee-jin Civil War that's been going on. On our actual last episode 279, we gave more like a brief summary of all the news articles that had been coming out, which is what we normally do for news anyway on the show. But one of our hosts, Warren here, decided to make an entire presentation on the entire conflict, and we decided to make it its own video on YouTube, so that is why you are here.
So, we're going to break down the whole Civil War situation. This is what we're going to try to go through, right? I'll bring us some context first, right? And then we'll go through what Hybe has said. We'll go through what Ador has said through Min Hee-jin. We'll cover some interesting bits if you have time, and then we'll, talk about what's remaining, right? Because this isn't going to be a one and done situation. Now we got to figure out what's going to happen, right? Okay, so here's some of the context, right? And just for everyone's awareness, I did a lot of research into this. I looked at primary evidences. I looked at news articles. I read the fucking law book. One of the issues I've identified in the recent week or so is there's a lot of mistranslations floating around. People seem to believe it. Check your sources before saying stuff like, "Oh, Sakura was too old to join NewJeans." Timeline doesn't match up, guys. That never happened. Stuff like that I wanted to avoid. So I pulled out a lot of evidences, sources, that kind of situation. And we're going to try to be unbiased as much as possible, but we're also going to give our opinions. That's just the nature of how we do this shit, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, here's the people involved, right? There's four main players. There's Min Hee-jin, who's the CEO of Ador. There's Shin Dong-hoon, who's the VP of Ador. He's the vice president. I couldn't find a picture of him.
Yeah, he gets kept being brought up in all the articles as executive A. It's the Shin guy. It's him. Right. It's him.
The fun thing about this guy is that he came from Hybe a couple months ago. It's not been too long.
Right.
Hybe is accusing him of stealing company information in that process. We'll get more into that. But he is seen as Min Hee-jin's left arm, the right arm being Kim Ye-min, the creative director. Those three make up the board of directors on Ador, right? Let's talk about Hybe. Hybe has their chairman, everyone's favorite, Bang PD. He made BTS. Here we are. He made Glam. That didn't make him where he is right now, but hey, here he is. We also have Park Ji-won, who is their current CEO of Hybe, formerly of Nexon, now CEO of Hybe. He became their CEO in a matter of like 2 years. So clearly Bang really trusts this guy. You know what I mean? And from the most part, he's been communicating. He's been the one communicating between Bang and Min. That was a key part of Min's press conference. And then Hybe retroactively kind of confirmed this as well through their rebuttal as well. So that's the thing to keep in mind. There's other people involved. We'll get to them when we need to. So here's Ador, right? Ador has 100% of shares. They're not a publicly traded company. They're private. 80% of their shares are owned by Hybe. And then 18 is owned by Min Hee-jin, and then 2% is owned by the rest of Ador leadership. So that would be Kim Ye-min and what's his name, Shin Dong-hoon as well.
And if I remember correctly, Min Hee-jin initially owned 20%, but gave the other two CEOs 1% each, or something like that.
That is right. That is how it happened. Originally, when the contract was written, there was a 20%. There is a lot of details in terms of their shareholder agreement, which we'll get into later. But the key takeaway right now should be that Hybe and Ador are two different companies.
Yeah.
Yes, one is a subsidiary and the other is a parent, but the issue here is that they're, in the terms of law, they're separate legal entities. Although parent companies have the right to perform audits on their subsidiaries, which is why this whole situation is happening right now.
So the way I like to think of it is that Min Hee-jin and her CEOs run the company, right? And I think of Hybe, they're 80%. They're more like the shareholders of the company where they control 80%. Now, if the company's running healthy and fine, Min Hee-jin and her friends are making all the decisions, doing anything they want. They own, even though they only own 20%. And Hybe is more or less just making profits because they own 80% of the shares. But once shit hit the fans like now, that's when Hybe starts to flex its 80% muscles where they actually control the company, right?
Right. And this is where their company structure, leadership, and shareholder structure is kind of fucked up, and not in favor of Hybe and in favor of Ador. But we'll get to that when we need to, right? Okay. We need to talk about what a breach of trust laws are.
So that is the main thing that Hybe is accusing Min Hee-jin of, right?
Right. This was mentioned around the articles a while, and then on the 25th, they officially filed for a accusation charge against CEO Min Hee-jin for breach of trust. This would essentially mean, right? This is a little different from embezzlement, right? Because breach of trust deals with trust. Breach of trust deals with betraying someone's trust. It literally says when a person handling the affairs of others gains a financial benefit or causes a third party to gain such benefit by acting in violation of their duties, thus causing damage to oneself, the same penalties as in the preceding paragraph apply. Preceding paragraph being embezzlement. So they're kind of seen together. Embezzlement being more about money, and then breach of trust being more about betraying the rights, the betraying the... How did you word it earlier, Doug?
So the way I think of it is that, sure, you could harp in on the word financial benefit, but the way I see it in this case is more, was Min Hee-jin not acting in the best interest of the company?
Of the company, yeah.
Right.
Was she looking to maybe even hurt her own company in order to screw Hybe?
Or herself. Yeah.
There you go. Yes. Now, one of the terms we're going to throw around a lot is conspiracy versus attempt. Conspiracy, both of these are types of incomplete, inchoate offenses, where conspiracy means you're planning on doing it, you wanted to do it, but you didn't actually do anything about it. Attempt means you started doing it, you didn't complete it, that's it.
And from what I can see on your slide, if you just conspire to do something illegal, where I think with Anita, let's say we are the Ador executives and we just said, let's screw over Hybe and get out of this situation. But we didn't do anything. That is not a breach of trust, right?
Right.
But if I start to steal data from Hybe because I know someone there, and I start to give it out to other people and do things like that, that is an attempt, and then I'm screwed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So this is where one of the things Hybe and Min Hee-jin are disagreeing on. Hybe is claiming that there is enough evidence for attempt. Min Hee-jin and her lawyers are basically claiming that there was not enough evidence for a full-on action. This was just jokes for the fun, for the memes.
So functionally, Min Hee-jin's claiming we might have conspired to get out of Hybe, but we were just joking, writing some plans up. It didn't mean anything.
It was just ideas.
But Hybe is saying this Shin guy took the data from us, took it back to Ador, showed Min Hee-jin the data, and then started sending it out to people in order to attempt to get out of the company, right?
Right. Now, that becomes Hybe's responsibility to prove that happened, first of all, and that was with the intent of taking over Ador.
Correct.
So, that's where we are. Essentially, Hybe is claiming that Min Hee-jin is trying to seize control of management with Ador, prompting them to swiftly activate their audit authority on the 22nd. So what's essentially going on here is on the 22nd, they launched an audit. That's the audit you're hearing about all the time. They're doing an internal investigation. A part of that is give me your laptop, Min Hee-jin. A part of that was going to Shin Dong-un's place, taking his shit, looking at it. All of which are company property, not his personal shit, just the company shit. You know what I mean?
Do you guys, if you guys watch K-dramas, you know that point where people show up with boxes at the company and start shoving shit in the boxes? That's what this is. That's what this is. Yeah.
Essentially. Typically, this is done by, like, the law.
The policemen do it.
The policemen, like the prosecutors. But, I mean, I guess Hybe has the right to do it because they are the parent company to their subsidiary, which in this case is Ador, right? Hybe basically came out through different press releases that Shin Dong-un passed Hybe internal information to Ador, that Ador talked with third-party analysts and investment firms, and that Min Hee-jin was going around saying that other Hybe group's talents were copying off of her and NewJeans, Islet, To Us, Rice, BTS, these kind of things, right? This is the first plan that Hybe is referring to. There's just Project 1945. It's also referred to as the Great Sins of Hybe, if you've also seen that floating around. Essentially, Hybe wanted to get Ador wanted to get public opinion to sway so hard in favor of Ador that they wanted to pressure Hybe into selling the remaining 80% of shares to a third-party investor that is favorable to Ador.
Additionally, we mentioned this on the podcast episode, but 1945 is a very important date because it is the date when Korea got out of being a colony of Japan. So it is a very serious date in Korea.
Right. It's kind of edgy.
It's very edgy to do that.
What a name.
And based on what Hybe is releasing, they literally have the document that says Project 1945 on it.
Yeah. I mean, in this screenshot that they released, it says objective, and it says, ultimately leave Hybe, and then make themselves untouchable within Hybe. Complete freedom. There was also another plan that they dug up which I'm going to call the empty shell plan, which is based off of the Katalk here. Essentially, what they wanted to do, or what Hybe is claiming that Ador wanted to do, is that Min Hee-jin would first exit Hybe by selling all of her shares, making Ador an empty shell, because apparently Min Hee-jin isn't there and they're now an empty shell. Then they would go ahead, partner with a third-party investor to buy Hybe's shares at a very low value. They're claiming that Ador would have very low share values at this point because the key asset, Min Hee-jin, is absent.
Right.
Which doesn't make any sense because New Jeans is there still and they make a bucket load of fucking money.
Yeah.
And then once that happens, Ador would buy those shares back with the funds that they made off of number one. So, does that kind of make sense?
So from what I understand, Min Hee-jin gets out of her 18-20%, whatever, gets out of the company. Company tanks because she's not there. We get someone else to buy the company for cheap, and we just put the funds back that we got from selling our 20% back into the company, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then
what is this thing on the right?
That's when she said, "Oh, 대박."
So what this image is showing is that this plan was going to happen. They even marked out how much money it would take, whatever. And there's proof that Min Hee-jin responded back with 대박, which means great, fantastic. So this is one of the smoking guns that got dropped, where it makes her look extremely bad.
It is.
Yeah.
That being said, do I count Kakao Talks as like a planning document?
In America, it's enough. I don't know about Korea though.
I've seen. We'll get into this later, but there were multiple lawyers that came out that were like, I don't think Kakao Talk documents count as planning.
In America, it would be enough though. That's all I'll say.
Okay, here's what Ador had to say about those two things. Like Doug mentioned in the actual podcast episode, Shin Dong-un has said, I didn't share that with anybody. This was an internal memo that I didn't share with anybody. That's why it's on my laptop. Min Hee-jin essentially replied to the whole situation and said that they were just messing around, they're playing around, these fuckers were trying to capture Kakao Talk screenshots, take them out of context, and then, build out this narrative. Which, I mean, like, sure, they could have used confirmation bias against her. You know what I mean?
What I would say, for me personally, is even though she says these sekis were trying to use my Kakao chats to, as she said, quote, kill me, that means like, on a work level. The fact that it looks so bad, even in an isolation, is pretty bad. Like, you can take all the context in the world, but when you start having these plans, and the plans have like specific dollar amount on the plans, I personally think it goes past the point of just playing around. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be one thing if Anita and I were texting and we were like, let's get the F out of this shitty company. And he was like, oh, well, yeah, let's get some other rich people to buy it from them, right?
Right.
But when I start to tell Anita it's going to take 330 to get out of this company, we're going to get these investors to come in, I'm going to divest my 20%.
Oh. This is
personally, I think that's when it went too far.
Right.
Right. I don't think it's just playing around at that point.
That's a little too specific for a joke. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. However, what I will say as a Korean speaker is that it is written like a joke. That is like, I mean, she did respond with 대박.
Yeah,
but still.
Okay. I don't know. Anita, do you have any comments about what's going on with this takeover allegation so far?
Well, the thing is, so I was keeping up with the press conferences that was coming out, and I feel like the way it was presented and the way that they were willing to show these screenshots, right, and explain like, yeah, these conversations happened, but it was not serious. Like it was not an actual plan. I don't know. I feel like I can see it. I can see the argument in a way, but also, like as we were talking about it, it's almost a little too detailed. Like you're like one step away from saying like, yeah, let's do it, right? Like I feel like that would be the last straw. Like if she had said like, yeah, let's go ahead and do it, because it's already done.
Why would you
planned
leave
out.
this paper trail? You know,
Exactly.
Like,
that too.
I know, it seems so stupid.
So, my personal take is that, and this is just my opinion, is that I think both arguments kind of make sense here.
Of course.
Like,
Yeah.
I am pretty sure that, okay, okay, at this point, I'm like, okay, whatever. Maybe you were just not being serious. That can still be alarming from Hybe's perspective.
Oh, of
Well,
course.
that's why. Yeah.
This is exactly where, like, I think I agree with both of you guys. Like,
It's
Like,
yeah.
this looks so bad.
it looks
Like,
terrible. Looks terrible.
I
Why
know
would you
this
give
thing-
them evidence like this? Do this shit in your text messages. Do it in your Instagram DMs, not in company property with company.
the
Or
fact
never
that-
actually have like text about it. Like if you have a conversation like this sensitive, like you would never have that like physical proof that it happened.
The issue with this case is that Hybe might not have literal proof that Min Hee-jin agreed that let's start giving out our company secrets to other people, right? There might not be literal proof that they started to do that, but there is proof of these messages. There's proof that Shin took information back from Hybe to Ador,
Right, yeah.
right? It just is all building on each other. It's like, well, something had to have happened.
Something fucking happened.
Right? That's the problem Hybe is gonna have to prove that that's enough to say, well, they were clearly doing shit. Right?
That's actually a good pivot because one of the people that got all this company information that's a third party is a shaman.
So explain what a shaman is if people don't know at home.
Shamans, okay. I mean, they're like semi-religious folks that this is the guy. They show up. They are fortune tellers, kind of. They read the future. They can put curses. They can clear
They
curses.
give advice.
Right. Like, here's the thing. Like, culturally speaking, shamans are a lot more accessible in Korea. People go to them for fun. You know, like people know them.
The way I'll describe it is it's not based off of like Buddhism, Taoism, or Confucianism. It's more based on Korean folk religions,
Right.
which kind of are naturally occurred in Korea back in the day. But there are a lot of motifs in current day things that still reference these shamans. It's a way bigger deal in Korea. It's like, you know how in America we see like fortune tellers on TV, they're like, call me now, and everyone just laughs at them.
Right.
You know?
Right.
In Korea, some of this stuff is taking pretty seriously. Some people consult shamans as if they're their own life coaches, things like that. Like, there's a higher probability that someone takes a shaman seriously than someone takes a fortune teller seriously in America. You know, it's a somewhat big deal.
The exact movie title is not coming to my head right now, which is why I looked up Mudang Yeonghwa. But they are on a similar level to, like, for example, like a high priestess at a church. Like you would go to them for advice, that kind of thing. So here's what Hybe said. Essentially, Hybe came out and they said that Min has been talking with the shaman. She has been leaking a lot of company confidential information. They discussed the establishment of a joint venture, stock options, establishments of a new label, that kind of thing. And then they added all this information about their conversation about BTS. Min was asking, "Do you think BTS is going to go to the military or not?" Shaman says they're gonna go. You know, and then Min Hee-jin was like, "Do you think? I think it would be better for me if BTS goes to the military." Haha. And then the shaman goes, "I will make them go. It's not like they want a gold medal or anything." This obviously happened over Kakao Talk.
I want to point out one more thing. The reason why shamans are really in everyone's mind in the forefront, I think a lot of it is because of the South Korean political scandals of 2016 with former President Park Geun-hye, where it was essentially proven that she had a shaman friend who essentially was helping her run the country, right?
Make decisions. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when people start, like, there's a very negative connotations now right now to like business people or higher up people using shamans. It's seen very negatively right now.
The thing was, people kind of picked that up real quick. You know what I mean? This was actually where the general public started to shift a little bit.
People were saying that Min Hee-jin might have had a shaman friend talking to her, but people felt like Hybe was potentially just because this information came out about an hour before the press conference, 2 hours before the press conference. People were thinking that this is just an attempt by Hybe to throw her under the bus, to associate her with the negative aspects of shamanism and the corruption that could follow with it, things like that, right?
Right. So during the press conference, Min Hee-jin went on to say, "Oh, that fortune teller isn't just somebody I went to fortunes for. This person is just somebody I know. They've always been an acquaintance of mine, so can't the fortune teller be considered an acquaintance? Are fortune tellers like untouchable peasants now?" Is the quote she used. Obviously, you could tell she was kind of pissed off.
The issues with this whole situation is that Hybe is claiming that she told the shaman information that you shouldn't tell someone outside of the business side of Hybe / Ador, right? And that's where this part gets muddied, right? Because she told her some things that she probably shouldn't have said. But at the end of the day, even though you might have like NDAs with your company, you still probably talk to your friends a little bit about something, you know?
Right.
So
Exactly how much, yeah.
exactly. That's what this is.
It comes down to how much conversation they had, how much information was actually shared.
How much does she know her, right?
Hybe did refute that in their 12th Testament rebuttal the day after. They claimed that confidential details were dropped, such as the quantity of executive stock options, the names of potential investors, and the percentage of ownership per investors, which those particular things don't particularly read as confidential details to me, but I will give them the benefit of the doubt here, because if I was Hybe, I wouldn't be dropping all of my best evidence right now.
Exactly. So when they go to court and they show the chat logs of this, we'll see how bad it was, and that'll really allow everyone to get the full picture of what was going on. But as of right now, Hybe is saying she gave the shaman all these secrets. Shamans are bad. Look at what's going on. Min Hee-jin is saying this shaman's just someone I know. I was just shooting the shit, telling her about my current job, what's going on there, yada yada yada. Right? Yeah.
I think the shaman leg is pretty straightforward. Where it gets really fucking muddy is the shareholder agreement. This first came up in the press conference, right? Because she started referring to it as a slave contract. They were like, this is the only time the lawyers stepped in, and they were like, "Oh, don't talk about that. You can't talk about that. We'll talk about that later."
When you mention a slave contract in the Korean entertainment industry, it's a very loaded thing to say.
It's a very loaded thing to say. It's been a loaded thing to say since the TVXQ incident back in.
But by Min Hee-jin coming out and say it's like I'm bound by a slave contract, she's inviting all of the things that come along with that discussion.
Yeah. She essentially is saying it so that she can tell people that she is forever tied to Hybe without Hybe's permission.
So what does that mean?
So the day after, this did not last long, 한국경제, Korean economy, dropped a report in terms of what the NDA shareholder agreement looked like. Apparently we're not supposed to know about it, but now we do. So what are you going to do? Hybe essentially was like, oh, this non-compete is not going to be applicable after 2026. It's not a big deal. Move on.
That 2026 date is specific to the 5th anniversary of Ador's founding as a company. So Hybe is saying it's a non-compete that just lasts for 5 years after the company starts, so she can't just leave the company before then.
So this is where 한국경제 stepped in. They were like, no, I don't think that's true. First of all, the non-compete applies for 5 years after you leave the company in two different ways. One, you need to stop being the manager, which is your CEO. You need to stop also being the shareholder of whatever shares you have of Hybe. So let's say...
Let's go over that again. So Hybe is saying the non-compete leaves if you, number one, stop being CEO. Number two, have no stocks left in the company.
Yes.
Right?
Well, Hybe isn't saying that. This report is. But yes.
This report is saying that. Okay.
Yeah. So you have to first stop being an employee and you have to stop being a shareholder, which is not very normal for a non-compete. I've never heard of that before, personally. But I'm also not a financial advisor to any means. But here's the stocks, right? Here's the shares, right? Because remember, earlier we talked about the 18% that Min Hee-jin has. Through a putback option, she can sell back 13.5% to Hybe whenever she wants after later 2024. So that's later this year.
In the late 2024, she can sell 13.5% back, period. Okay,
Period.
That's fine. That's fine. That's normal.
That's normal.
Yeah.
The other 4.5%, she cannot sell to anybody or give it up without Hybe's permission, per this agreement.
This is where we get into the terms of slave contracts. So
Right.
it is saying the other 4.5%, Min Hee-jin cannot sell unless Hybe agrees to it. Now, can you see why that's potentially an issue? Because Hybe can just say, go F yourself. You could hold on to that 4.5% forever, and then you can't make another K-pop company somewhere else, right? That's the claim.
Yep, you can't work for another K company anywhere else until you sell that 4.5%.
Okay.
Which you can't do without Hybe's permission. So essentially, per this agreement, Hybe controls where she works. Now, here's the thing. Hybe essentially came back and said, we were going through that. We started talking about that agreement last year. You didn't like it. We agree it's a bad contract. So essentially, they were in the process of renegotiating it. There was another report from 조선경제 that came out that confirmed it, except one key detail was the putback option. Originally, when they agreed on the 13.5%, the putback option was for 13 times the original price. So what that means is once Min Hee-jin sells back that 13.5%, she would get 13 times what she originally bought it for.
Okay.
That's a big level of profit. According to reports, now she wants 30 times of what she originally paid for.
Let's put it in perspective. So Hybe is now saying that we agreed that this 4.5 you have to keep it until we let you sell it is a bad thing. They said we agree it's bad. We were working on alleviating that, fixing that, finding a better solution with her. But at the moment, she can say it's a slave contract because it still exists in the original wording, even though she agreed to sign that contract initially, right?
This is where I was like, you're a shitty.
And she came out and said that Min Hee-jin came out and said, I did not read the contract before I signed it.
Right.
She just said that specifically.
Why?
So that's
Why
her
would
problem
you do
there.
that?
Whatever.
So,
But Hybe is saying it's a slave contract. We agree. We were working through it. But, at the moment, we didn't work through it. So it's bad. It is bad, right?
one of the things that led to the conflict between Hybe and Min Hee-jin, in her press conference reportedly, was this, right? She apparently was like, I don't know how to read this. It's long. I don't know how to go through it. And apparently at the time, she was good friends with the CEO of Hybe, which is our boy Park Ji-won. And she messaged Park Ji-won, and she was like, dude, like, do I have to read all this? And apparently he went, dude, you just trust me.
So she's an
Just trust me,
idiot.
dude.
Just trust me.
In terms of the other thing about the 13% and 30%, let's say, for instance, that Min Hee-jin, let's say that 13% was 13 times. So let's say at the beginning when she sells it, it was worth $1 million, right? Mm-hmm. And let's say it was 13 times the profit. Let's say she would get $13 million, right? But she wanted to change it to be 30 times. So that's going from 13 million to 30 million. That's a very significant difference.
That's a lot
right?
of millions.
Big jump.
So that's
big
why
jump.
people are able to spin this, that this is more of a greed issue with Min Hee-jin, that she wanted to have these new financial terms, get more money, and then when Hybe didn't agree with it or dragged out the negotiations, she started crying wolf on this all, right? Is that the argument?
That is what essentially Hybe is saying, which is like, who
I could see that though, to be fair.
Let's be honest. Who doesn't like money?
Yeah, of course.
I use it to pay my rent. I use it to eat my food.
You know,
Wait,
the
one
funny
thing I want to
is-
clarify though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, about that statement of the negotiation, right? So she was asking 30 times, right? The original.
Yeah.
No, it's
At
not
that-
30 times the original. Technically, about 2 point something times the original. So she's going from
Okay.
13 times to 30
An increase.
times, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Yes. but there was no renegotiation talked about, or at least mentioned, of that 4.5%.
No, that's the thing. Those were two separate issues.
So what happened?
Right.
What they were agreeing on is that we will put the 4.5% back with the 13.5%, so
I
that
see.
it's an 80% putback option.
I see.
Which is already a big increase if you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So more or less, these are two separate issues, but both of them agree that the bottom thing, the slave contract part, the 4.5,
Right.
she can't sell with a Hybe's agreement. Both of them agree it's shit, and they were going to work to fix it. Which, that kind of looks better. That doesn't look good for anyone because Hybe was shitty for putting it in, but it looks okay for them that they're willing to renegotiate it, right? So you can't have.
Well,
a good
she's
and a
already
bad.
signed it. Yeah.
They don't just cancel each other out. It's still shitty.
Right.
But
Right.
And then the other part is the part where the 13% or 30%. That kind of looks bad for Min Hee-jin because it's more or less Hybe just saying, look how greedy she was being about this. And when we didn't give it to her, she started to say everyone's copying her group.
Now,
Right?
Right. Here's the thing. Here's where it gets a little. If you have to think a little bit, right? She essentially needs Hybe, per the original agreement. She needs Hybe's permission to sell all of her shares.
Right.
Yeah.
Her plans involve selling all of her shares. The first
Correct.
step has been, I sell all my shares, I leave Ador. That's the empty shell argument. You can't make the empty shell argument without selling your 4.5%. So now we come to the question of whether a shareholder takeover is actually possible.
The stupidest thing about this argument is whether the problem is whether she knew she couldn't, her argument is that I couldn't have even gotten out of it anyway. How could this plan exist? Right.
Right.
That's that could be her argument. But at the same time, Hybe could be, this girl stated she didn't even read the contract. She didn't even know it was impossible. So it's like it's another one of those splitting hairs things, right?
Yeah.
Because at one point, Min Hee-jin could say, I couldn't have even gotten out of it. Why would I have tried to get out of the company when it wasn't going to be impossible? But then Hybe is like, she literally stated she couldn't read the contract. So she wouldn't have even known that anyway. So she did try to get out, even though she couldn't. Right? So
I don't know.
So it's like either way, it's like, who knows, right?
Just how much did each person know? Yeah.
Exactly. But I
That's
would
hard to
assume,
tell.
because Hybe's lawyers are very good, I'm assuming that Hybe knew that this plan to get out wouldn't work regardless of what happened.
See, that's
would
where I'm
assume
like,
so.
you knew it's not going to work anyways.
But
Why
I think they
are we
wanted
having
to
a mediocre
but
fuffle?
at the end of the day, though, if it depends, they're not going to get in trouble with this, but technically that's entrapment because they knew she was just digging a deeper hole for herself.
See, I know.
Right?
That's where I'm like,
Yes.
you are fucking
Right?
whatever.
So that's Hybe being the corporate entity it is, right? So all right, I think we got through the money issue. Those two things. Let's keep going.
All right. Let's talk about the angry Min Hee-jin narrative. She was at the press release.
Look at this photo.
Look at
That's
this POV.
Look at me. Now look at her. Look at our outfits. Come on, guys.
All right. She did the press conference. Everybody knows she did the press conference. She went through her entire life story, apparently. She began with Bang PD. She began with talking about how much he was in love with her when she came in 2019. Look at her.
Look at these emojis. Look at these emojis.
Look at these heart emojis. And then she's like crying. And then like.
On face value, it looks like she really respects him. And it's like, oh my God, you're the K-pop god. You're fantastic.
I mean, like.
Well, she was the employee at this point.
She was the employee because she was a CBO for Hybe when she came in.
Yeah.
When she came in, Bang PD asked her for three things. First, I'm going to ask you to rebrand Hybe so that we have a brand identity as a company. I'm going to ask you also to run the creative direction behind the new girl group, right? And eventually the third part became, please run the third company, Ador, which is essentially too.
And the motivation for that was Bang PD told her that BTS fans will not be happy if we debut a girl group under Big Hit proper. So therefore, we need you to make your own company to build it. Correct?
That yes.
That did come-
According to her.
Interesting.
According to her.
According to her, Bang PD told her.
Okay.
Now you can think of
agreement
that what you want.
Right.
But-
Before we get into that real quick, these are some of the cut talks that started popping up as as tension started building.
So Bang PD wrote, "Can you crush aespa?" Right? LOL. And she wrote, "Ha ha 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 ha." And then at the end, Min Hee-jin wrote, "I'm not even thinking about that."
Yeah.
People were really harping onto this, saying Bang PD wanted to crush aespa. Can you step on them? Can you crush them? Those are the translations. And people were up in arms that Bang PD would say this about aespa. But For me personally, my
Competition.
opinion is this is just like people shooting the shit about their competitors. Like it happens.
Yeah.
I'm
Like,
willing to
like,
say this is just
My family owns a business. Do we, when it's just us at the store, talk shit about the competitors? Of course.
But you
I
don't
do.
send. Do you send texts about it, Doug?
No, I wouldn't because we're not stupid like that. But,
Exactly.
I
but
mean,
you
like,
also have to think that was around the time when aespa was winning songs for like next level and stuff
Right.
like that. That was around that.
yeah, I mean, understandable. I feel like they
Yeah,
felt a little threatened.
you can
Yeah.
kind of see that it's written in 2021, December 2nd.
So Bang PD was watching some of the end of the year music shows where aespa was
Yeah.
like probably gonna win their songs. He's like, you can crush them with this new group, and she's like, I'm not even. Why would you ask that? I'm not even thinking about that. Right? Yeah.
It's kind of an awkward conversation, but whatever, right?
Yeah.
It
All
really
right.
showed that they were not on the same page about that.
And this was like later, she was like, okay. And then they stopped talking apparently because of all these tensions. And then this was a conversation that they had a while into their like quote unquote tension, right? Like he goes, oh, are you having fun? And she goes, LOL. He goes, why are you laughing, LOL? I'm just curious. And she goes, sorry? What are you trying to understand? He goes, like, are you having fun, lol? And she goes, of course I'm having fun. This is in response to Ditto and OMG getting on Billboard 100.
So the overarching narrative of this is that Bang PD did not like OMG. That's what people are claiming. Min Hee-jin pushed real hard and got OMG to be one of the title tracks, right? They released the songs. It goes on to Billboard. And then Bang PD asks, like, are you having fun? She's like, yeah. And it comes off that Bang PD thinks that Min Hee-jin is like, I'm shoving it in your face because the song's doing well, you know? But Min Hee-jin is more like, what's going on here? I'm just happy because we're doing well.
I was just doing
But Bang PD's more or less asking, are you having fun at my expense because I didn't like the song initially? And it's just like a misunderstanding about that.
The
That's
thing
what it
is,
kind
like,
of reads
Seems
as.
like
the messages come off really passive aggressive and really fucking awkward. Like, who
There's
begins with,
tension,
are you having
clearly.
fun? You know what I mean? Not congratulations, not you did it. Like, you begin with,
Or it's not like, congratulations, man, I was really wrong about that track, you know?
right.
Right?
The thing is, according to Min Hee-jin, back when they were working on Attention, back when they were doing Hype Boy, apparently Bang was not very pleased with the direction she was going in. He wanted apparently a Billie Eilish-esque concept, a more girl crushes concept, which you can see how that led into the Seraphim later down the line. But I mean, I don't know. This is
On one hand, maybe it's a misunderstanding. On one hand, maybe she is shoving it in his face. On one hand, maybe he's misinterpreting the situation. It's hard to tell. Right? It's just awkward. All
It's
we could
just
take
a
from this,
really-
they have very
Awkward,
awkward conversations.
all right. There was a whole nother kerfuffle about the Soul Music girl group debut, and then her conflict with Park Ji-won. I'm gonna try to summarize that as quickly as possible in this timeline that I have pulled up in this thing here because I couldn't put it into visuals in time. Essentially, Bang asked Hybe branding work and then the new girl group creative direction to Min Hee-jin.
Oh, by the way, Somu is Source Music.
Right.
You didn't specify that.
Music,
Source
yeah.
Music.
At this point, it was supposed to be a 3-person deal, right? Bang and Hybe is giving all the funds. Source Music is providing the infrastructure and the resources. Min Hee-jin is providing the creative direction. Sorry, I said that wrong. Bang and Hybe is providing the money. The music. I need to cut that out later. Bang is providing with Hybe all the music. Source Music is providing the money, the funds, the infrastructure, the assets, all that. Min Hee-jin is providing the creative direction. It was supposed to be a 3-way partnership. And then at that point, Min Hee-jin was like, okay, Minji, who is a trainee at Source Music, is pretty cool. She launched a Plus Global audition, which she acquired Hani through. And then she's casted all the other members through scouting. And at this point, all the trainees were managed by Source Music. eventually she wants more control. She was like, I want music that I like, and yada 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 yada. You can see here that they had a concept proposal and they had a conflict around that, which led into Ador becoming its own label. Bang at this point took 100% of all the shares, and sent money to Source Music so that they can transfer all the trainees from Source Music that Min Hee-jin wants into Ador. You have to keep in mind that Source Music, Hybe, and Ador are all separate legal entities. This is why they're buying quote unquote legal trainees off of each other, right?
Other things to think about here. The thing with Minji getting taken from Source is where those comments during the press conference where Min Hee-jin didn't play into that really terrible narrative people have about her liking young children, where she stated, "Yeah, I looked at all the trainees in Source. They were also like old, and I couldn't do anything with them. But then I saw Minji, and Minji looked so beautiful, and she even looks more beautiful than she does now. And it was just fantastic. And I knew I could do something with her." She did say that. It was very awkward for especially the Western perspective. Yeah, she said that there. So
the thing is,
awkward.
Okay, here's the thing. From like a Korean perspective, telling a person 이쁘다 is like, you say that to little kids all the time. Like I heard it when I was a little kid.
But is it normal to say you were prettier when you were younger?
She meant, in the context of it, she meant it as like there was so much potential when she was younger and she was a trainee. That part is clear, is very evident if you watch the whole clip. Like as a Korean speaker, that's what I'll say.
As I know it sounds speaker, it looks like a horror show.
I know. That's why I don't blame all of you guys. But like, trust me, it sounds a lot more natural, and nobody's harping on it in Korea.
And this is where we get, going back to what we talked about a couple minutes ago. This is where people are saying, essentially, Source footed the bill to make new jeans, right?
Yes.
This is what this is showing on.
Yes.
Additionally, it left Source not having a lot of money, even though Hybe eventually gave them money in exchange for the trainees. Apparently, Min Hee-jin also took some staff with her from Source. So
that
Source
is unconfirmed.
It's unconfirmed, but people are saying that Source was in a shitty position after she took the good trainees, right? The New Jeans girls out of Source that they just acquired, and then they disbanded G-Friend, and they were in the shitter, is more or less what the claim
It really
is.
did put Source Music in the shitter, because like at that point, like your ace trainees are gone. You need to launch a girl group in 2021. That's still the plan.
They just took all the new good trainees.
Right. So now, in hindsight, that makes sense why Le Sserafim debuted the way they did.
That's why Le Sserafim, and that's why the narrative is that Le Sserafim had a very short trainee period because Source needed to scramble to get a girl group going because they had nothing else that was making money at the company. And that's where the comments, when Source started to talk about, we'll take Sakura, Chaewon, because people know who they are and they're trained up and they're good. And that's when Min Hee-jin made the comments that when they told me, so now keep going, Warren. Now let's go into that, and then we'll come back to that.
Let's go into the part after that, right? Because apparently, their CEO promised when at the launch of Ador that New Jeans would be the first girl group to launch under Hybe. That was a part of the deal. That was apparently the statement that they used
in word,
to recruit all the other people.
That was in word, but not in writing.
I don't know if it was not in writing or if it was not in word. Yeah, that we never got anything out of both sides. But I will say is she complained a fuck ton to Park Ji-won about it. She was like, I have built all this company. I have all these people behind me under that one promise. Now that's gone. What are you going to do? And then at this point in the cat talks that was shared through that press conference, Park Ji-won did kind of side with Min Hee-jin. He was like, revenge comes after success. He did say stuff like that. He was agreeing that it's a shitty move. But on the other hand, Hybe did make a press release about this in their 12 statements. They were like, oh, we had to do that because, what is the word? You made all these demands. Of course we had to change stuff around and change these schedules. Like,
they're basically saying shit changed.
Right.
What Hybe was trying to say.
We had all these demands. So in that process, New Jeans' debut schedule could not help but be delayed, regardless of Hybe's attention, due to the division of the company and the transfer of contracts. Which, I mean, that makes sense. It takes time to move people over. You know what I mean?
And then because it was getting delayed, Source Music was like, well, we'll debut our group. And then they wanted to bring in older trainees like Yoonjin, Sakura, and Chaewon, people like them, and specifically Sakura and Chaewon were brought into the company, and Min Hee-jin apparently freaked out about that. In her own press conference, she stated it was crazy. She wanted to have a press conference talking about how, like, all this, like, I can't believe they're going to debut the girl group before mine, things like that, right?
Right.
That's where we get those comments.
That's where that came from. And that's where she started having conflicts with their CEO. Apparently, they were still kind of good friends up until, like a couple weeks ago when this shit broke out. I'm trying to think. I think that's pretty much the entire situation in terms of what she's
so it's just
about.
awkward between Min Hee-jin and Source because she was originally helping out Source, but then it seems like she took all the good new trainees from them, and then Source pivoted and like, well, we don't have a group now, let's debut a group. So they got older trainees, so they didn't have to train them, and then they debuted them before Min Hee-jin, which really pissed her off because she thought she was going to debut her group first, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Which I can kind of see where she's pissed off about.
I could get both sides of that, honestly.
Yep.
Like, you have a lot riding on that one promise. I can see that.
And Source did what they had to do, or else they'd have no groups right now.
According to her, the thing that broke the camel's back was
Eyelid and plagiarism.
This is where we go back to the first press release Ador had, because they were like, oh, like, I am unhappy because Eyelid is copying me, right? So this is some comparisons between Eyelid and New Jeans. Essentially, the argument that Min Hee-jin is proposing here between the first press release and the press conference that they had was that Eyelid copied off of New Jeans, not just in the visuals, but like in the framing of things, the way the things are structured. You get the idea, right? Not just surface level.
I could see it. I could see it.
I could kind of
side by side. Oh.
I mean, like, if you listen to their music, a lot of people were like, "Oh, this sounds like."
That being fair, how many other ways are you gonna put 5 girls next to each other in a photo, right? That's the other thing.
Okay, that's
true.
Right? It's kind of true.
The thing is, so she was very unhappy about this. She essentially she wrote an internal letter of complaint towards the leadership. This is what Doug was referring to earlier. And then her claim is that pissed people off, and now they're doing this to get rid of her. That's her claim. Mm-hmm. She was very unhappy about Eyelid copying off of New Jeans because she was, very proud of how unique they are and how they, came to revolutionize the industry. And she was like, why are you copying off of me? We're the same side here.
One of the biggest things is that there's stemming from the press conference and the way she talks about it, people feel like Min Hee-jin feels she feels like she owns the whole style of music and no one else can do it, right? It was evident to me through all of her statements and everything she says and the way she acts that she feels like I made this meta that we have, right? And it's my meta.
She did quote say that it is expected for other people to copy her. But on the other hand, she wouldn't expect it to happen from the same company that is typical.
It was a bigger issue for her.
The other thing that seemed very evident to me is that it kind of feels like Min Hee-jin wanted New Jeans to be the only girl group under the umbrella. That's what unless the concept was so different, like a band or something, That's what it kind of feels like to me in the way she was talking about things.
She never said that, so I'm not gonna assume she meant that.
No, it's just that's just completely my feeling. It's just a completely
your assumption.
The way she talks about the other groups at the company, La Seraphim, the way she talks about Eyelid. It seems like to me it feels like there was no room at Hybe other than for her thing. Like, I don't know what she would have been happy with, to be honest.
I don't know.
I
feel like. I mean, knowing about how things developed, right? Like her perspective of like what she was promised, what actually happened, what the restructuring, the order of things, how people were debuting and then not quite being what she thought it was going to be or what she had agreed on. Like, I get it. Like, I get the frustration in a way. At the same time, I'm left wondering, like...
It's the timing as well.
Yeah, Hybe as a parent company, right? Like, were they not in the place to, like, make decisions and manage and, like, provide I don't know, a better solution for like all of the companies that they're managing, like, right? Because I feel like
It feels like B-Lift and Min Hee-jin needed to have more discussions directly with
right,
each
like
other.
it should have been a conversation between all three, and Hybe being like the supervisor, right? Because they're the ones managing and providing the resources for a lot of these
This is
things,
where
these projects.
I'm like, okay, you apparently you responded back to Min Hee-jin on the 22nd at 10:01 a.m. in your 6-page essay about why this is fine. On the other hand, though, like that's not a conversation. Like that's like a complaint and a response. Like this is a good moment for these companies to start kind of collaborating and see how they can do things
Yeah.
differently.
Yeah.
And
I think
just in general.
it was like, I think on face level their response was like, it is what it is. But I think given the context of the timeline, she was like, well, fuck these people, you know.
Right. You can see how it's like a build of things.
It
right?
built.
Right.
And then once Islet came out, once they popped off as well, you know, it would just make me angry.
So I know
You know,
people are harping on Speed a lot, which is a Japanese girl group from the late 90s, about how New Jeans copied off of
Speed.
them. I brought in a different example, Mustang, which is a Netflix movie from 2015. You can
Oh,
also
wow.
see the similarities here. In terms of, I mean, you know, maybe this is cherry picked. I don't know what to tell you guys.
I feel like referencing things and like, I don't know. I always feel like it gets iffy when people start saying accusations of like copying and like
Ownership
plagiarism
over
and like,
things, you know.
especially when it comes to big visual concepts, right? Because I think it's very apparent that she's inspired by different things, right? How explicitly does she reference and say like, yeah, this is what I was looking at when making this, and like also from the side of Isla, like how like they probably took maybe similar sources, and that's how it ended up with a
No,
similar
the
product.
The truth is probably in the middle. That they're like, oh no, Jesus,
Right.
We could do some
It's
kind of
always
offshoot
it's
of
a
that
mix,
shit, right?
It's a mix, but
Now is that,
I don't know.
Should
It's
that be
just-
okay or should that be okay or not?
that's the
question.
issue, and I think it's even worse because it just shows how fragmented things were
company is.
between the companies, right? Like that it became an issue. Like if it had been a conversation,
This should have
it
all
might
been
not be
settled
that big a
internally.
deal.
To be fair,
Honestly, yeah.
yep.
From a creative sense, as someone who like consumes music, everybody copies off of each other. Like that's
Yeah.
just the fact of how things work. There's nothing that's completely new at this point. What I will say, however, is it comes down to how good you are at copying things. Like, if people catch on to the fact that you're copying way too easily, just means you're not good at what you're doing. You
well,
know what
I mean, people did call them New Jeans copies when the shit came out. To be honest,
people
but
were
at the end of
saying-
the day, people are like, Min Hee-jin is freaking out. Meanwhile, it's not like a situation where like her group didn't get successful. Her group is literally the #1 girl group at the moment, right? Like, so it's at the end of the day, it's like we're essentially digging into the fact that people who have generational wealth are arguing with each other, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the tough one.
All right. I'm gonna skip over miscellaneous. We'll talk about that if you ever need to. But what's next for these folks?
A big legal battle.
Oh my god.
All right. Min Hee-jin is most likely gonna get fired.
Yes.
There's been a couple back and forth in terms of the timing of things, but Ador has essentially agreed to have a board of directors meeting, and also a general shareholders meeting, at which a general shareholders meeting they can replace the board of directors, and once that's replaced, they can replace Min Hee-jin with a different CEO. That is Hybe's goal right now.
And they probably can, considering they're 80%. Yep.
Yeah. Once they have this is why Min Hee-jin was like not trying to have a general shareholders meeting. Once that happens, it's
done.
done. So, this release is gonna be the last Min Hee-jin New Jeans release.
Yeah, probably.
Wow.
99%.
And that's a little, I mean, from a consumer perspective, right? Like, I wouldn't say I've been a fan of her as a person, right? Of Min Hee-jin, but as a creative,
very fucking controversial. Yeah.
it's a little scary, right? Like knowing like, is the sound gonna change? Concepting gonna change?
We'll just wait till she gets out of this non-compete and we'll get fresh
We'll
slacks
see.
down the line. You know?
We'll see.
5 more years. We'll see what happens. There's a positive outcome the 1% where she steps down from CEO and stays their creative director, but like I wouldn't expect that from happening.
I would only agree to that if I'm saying you're gonna back up the Brinks truck to my house and give me so much money that I'll shut my mouth. You know what I mean?
How much
I
money?
I would say you're gonna give me 100 million plus,
Jesus.
and I'll go away.
But obviously that didn't go well, right?
No, it's not going to. Yeah, obviously, because the crux of this is 13 versus
13%.
13 versus
Right.
30%, which is only like double the amount, right? Like,
Yeah. Plus relations. I don't know
at
if
the end
it's
of the day,
irreparable at this
in order
point.
for change to happen in the industry, people need to make sacrifices. Like for instance, back in the day in the NFL football, people used to sign with a team that drafted them, and they held their rights indefinitely. So if you don't agree with the money, you're never gonna move teams. But it took certain people to sacrifice their playing careers in order to have the lawsuits that changed that, right? Min Hee-jin is going to end up being one of those types of figures, I would assume. Someone who sacrificed what they had
contracts.
going in order to pull back the curtain, in order to do something about it, you know?
Yeah, can't really control another person non-compete with shares. I mean, that's
Exactly.
whatever. Hybe.
Yeah.
Hybe is probably gonna do okay.
Min Hee-jin, if anything, opened the closet and showed us what's going on behind the scenes. Kind of exposed them for being a big corporate entity, like we already knew they were. But people were like, no, it's Bang PD and the people. They're a small company. They came up from nowhere, success story. But at the end of the day, it's a giant corporation that's making trillions of dollars or billions of dollars. It's gonna happen, you know. Are we really surprised the big corporate entity's a big corporate entity, you know?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Like one of
saw
the
it
quotes
grow.
that came out of the press conference was, "Oh, these bastards are just golfing, drinking all weekend." I was like, "That's what they do. That's big companies." That being said, one of the things they're gonna have to deal with going forward is the shitty public image now that they
Perception.
have.
Yeah.
It unfortunately is influencing some of their assets, some of their talents. It is.
Eyelid copied us. She said B-Lift Lab is shit, and it hypens under that. She might have hinted that like he stole little concepts from BTS. All of this is involved now. Min Hee-jin has dragged a lot of the groups at this company. She said things good and bad about
Name
a lot of
dropped.
the parts of this company, and there are people who are pro Min Hee-jin, and it's going to affect how they open their wallet, right?
And I do think a part of it, this was Hybe's oversight, because technically they did mention these talents first. And I was like, I am sure she said all these things behind you, but like, why would you tell me any of this shit?
Why would you say, well, Min Hee-jin shit talked these groups and claimed they copied her? And then they put up the evidence like, they kind of did copy. I don't know. But I feel so bad for the kids because they're just innocent bystanders and all of this. They just sing the shit that they're told to sing.
Yeah.
And do the concept they're told to do. And at the end of the day, these Eilish girls are probably getting stressed as shit, even though they've done literally nothing but win that TV show and perform where and when they were supposed to.
Right.
Let's talk about New Jeans.
I think they'll be fine.
I really hope so too.
I really hope so.
I think they're too big to. I think they're too big to fail.
I am sure they'll be successful going forward with their money, but like music wise.
No. Here's the thing. If Hybe kicks out Min Hee-jin, all the success New Jeans has post Min Hee-jin is a giant middle finger to her. I think they'll do everything in their power to keep it like top tier.
I agree with you, but at the same time, I'm not.
Would it be? Will it be? Right?
Like who
the question
is
mark.
there that can replace her? Like I'm sure Kim Min is still gonna be there, or maybe not. Who knows?
Producers will probably still be around. I'm guessing, right?
Right. Like I'm sure 250 and Frank are still gonna be around.
All
but
I'll
like,
say is money
It's
will
the
talk,
creative vision,
and I think
yeah.
that they will invest super heavily to like as a middle finger to her. Honestly.
all right, last bit. How is this influencing you and me, all of us?
It's affected my sleep. Tired
Same.
of talking about this.
It's
I
11
mean-
p.m.
I think what Doug mentioned, right, is, and I feel like we already kind of knew about this because we talk about this every week and we kind of are invested in it. But like for general public too, like just the behind the scenes of like this is a money machine. Like this are people who are making contracts that are not always fair, or that you don't. It's not always a fair thing that's going on behind the scenes, maybe, and not it's not as clean cut. It gets really messy, and like people.
It just gets you disillusioned with the industry.
Right. It's like pulling back the curtain of like, yeah, it's that messy.
They should all just be kumbayaing. Look how much money we're raking, guys. It's so great.
Right.
See, this is where this becomes an issue for the industry, right? Because like first off, we had this 50-50 situation. Now we have this shit.
That's true.
Hybe was supposed to
back.
become. Hybe is right now on track to becoming one of the 20 largest companies in Korea at the moment. That has become a huge. They're taking a huge halt on that at the moment because
their stocks are in the shitter because of this.
Yeah. That brings us to question for investors. That's like, oh, like, do we keep investing in this K-pop industry? High risk. You know what I mean?
High risk. It's like one kid does something bad or one CEO goes rogue. Like, we're done.
GG, you're done. Yeah. So yeah. This is where I'm worried. I know I'm always worried, but like
I'm a little worried.
This is where we are,
now.
but we will have to see because
Good
there's
money
going to be about a year of lawsuits now before we figure out what actually happened.
It might actually be done in about a month and a half if they
That would
actually
be great.
A month and a half.
Please, that would be great.
They might fire her within a month and a half. The actual breach of trust accusation that might take 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
We'll have to see.
Okay.
That's it.
This has been
boy.
our breakdown of the Hybe Min Hee-jin Civil War. Thanks for joining us. If you watched the episode and then this, double thank you. It's been a long
Thank you.
I'm tired as shit now.
Same.
I'm going to go to bed. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. And here's an extra special shout out to all of our Fiesta Patreons on patreon.com. Bagel, Charles, Cotton Ball, Ellie, Irv Sean, Gogu Mama, Honey Pools, Liam's Games and Toys, Luke Daniels, NJ Parks, South Texas Once, Siu Sumi. And thank you for joining SojuTalk, your weekly shot of K-pop. Special thanks to our Discord server mods: Jacob, K-Music Erday, Koala, Max, No Bias Nuda, Tuggles, and Wolf297.